even by the already impossibly degraded standards. The last 48 hours of Donald Trump's pronouncements have been disturbing and dangerous. It started yesterday during a bizarre address about autism, Tylenol, and vaccines.
Effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol, during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. We want no mercury in the vaccine. We want no aluminum in the vaccine. The MMR, I think, should be taken separately. This is based on what I feel, the mumps, measles, and all the three should be taken separately. Don't let them pump your baby up with the largest pile of stuff you've ever seen in your life going into the delicate little body of a baby.
This was all nonsense, and that's the most charitable word I could use. I mean, vaccines do not cause autism. This has been established at peer review after peer review after peer review over decades. It's been studied. There is no established link between Tylenol and autism either, certainly not the very elevated risk he talked about. But Trump didn't stop there. He absolutely flew off the rails during his speech at the UN today. Admittedly, the day got off to a bad start.
The President and the First Lady, Dana, have just walked in right on time, I would say. Right on cue.
Yeah, they're a couple of minutes ahead of schedule, and, you know, we love that punctuality.
Yes.
And the First Lady also going to address the UN as well as she arrives with her husband, and they go up the escalator this time.
So I heard a few questions being shouted there, but no responses. Stand by. I don't know if there's audio on that or not.
Chuck Schumer.
Okay, I heard the end. That was Chuck Schumer, and there's a reason for that.
Slight escalator mishap. For what it's worth, a UN official told the AP that Trump's own party was responsible for escalator gate. That did not stop the president from grousing about it and many other topics in front of the whole world.
All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Many years ago, a very successful real estate developer in New York, known as Donald J. Trump, I bid on the renovation and rebuilding of this very United Nations complex. I remember it so well. I said at the time that I would do it for $500 million, rebuilding everything. It would be beautiful. I used to talk about, I'm going to give you marble floors. They're going to give you terrazzo. I'm going to give you the best of everything. You're going to have mahogany walls. They're going to give you plastic. But they decided to go in another direction. You walk on terrazzo. Do you notice that? And I'm really good at predicting things, you know. They actually said during the campaign they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything. And I'm telling you that if you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going to fail. It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. Let's see, I can tell you. I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
That was just a sample of the hour of ramblings by our 79-year-old president.
This was a much more emboldened President Trump than the first speech he made there at the UN during his first term. You heard them there early on essentially trashing the UN and pointing fingers and admonishing some of the countries there in the room, telling some of them that their countries are going to hell in terms of migration. You also you also heard him talk about Palestinian statehood and break from some U.S. allies who are recognizing Palestinian statehood. He said doing so would be rewarding Hamas. He also talked about the war in Ukraine, saying that he thought he could end it because of his relationship with Putin. And he also was really focused on climate change, saying that climate change is a con job. Of course, the overwhelming consensus of the scientific community is that climate change is very real and primarily caused by human behavior. We're going to have Daniel Dale on a little bit later to talk about some of what President Trump said, but I want to start with our Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, what stood out with you with this speech?
Well, Pam, obviously that went way beyond the allotted time limit for any world leader to come and speak at the United Nations, maybe even quadruple what the time limit typically is. And basically what you just heard from President Trump amounted to a very forceful lecture to the United Nations about not just the body itself, but also how the world leaders sitting in front of him are running their own countries. That comment that you just noted there, the president said he knows what he's talking about and said a lot of their countries are going to hell in his view. And he started out that speech, Pam, it was quite clear where it was going to go, as he was saying that basically the faulty equipment as he came inside the building here at the United Nations symbolized the uselessness of the United Nations in its current form. He said the United Nations has potential, but that it is not living up to that potential as it is right now. Pam, two things he was talking about. A broken teleprompter, apparently. You could see the president there was reading off of a script in front of him, though he certainly went off script many times during those remarks. But also, as he came in the building, he and the First Lady were going up an escalator. We were actually standing there in the lobby during that moment, and the escalator kind of malfunctioned and stopped halfway through, and they walked the rest of the way up.
Good to be here.
I mean, at a certain point, you'll run out of adjectives to describe the rhetoric of the President of the United States, but your response to the speech today?
Well, he's adding more countries every day. Yes. Yeah, I think it's because, he said before the election that he was going to end the war in Ukraine and Gaza on day one. Unrealistic. And it seems like he's insecure about this, not being able to accomplish what he promised. I think folks have to just stop listening to him. I think that I feel really bad about having to say that. Or maybe we just give him a medal. Remember at the end of The Wizard of Oz?
He really wants one.
The end of The Wizard of Oz, the wizard gave the lion a medal. I think that's the point.
I think if you could do a Truman Show Nobel Peace Prize sort of thing for him, he would be extremely excited about it. But that point you made, I want to ask you about these two conflicts. One is today he came out seeming to sort of oscillate back towards Ukraine, and maybe they can get all their territory back.
And that's what made his UN speech so disturbing. He didn't show up as a leader, he showed up as a performer. Instead of outlining solutions, he recycled the same lines about borders, migrants, and enemies that he's been shouting about for years. The General Assembly wasn't an audience of world leaders to him. It was just another crowd to rile up and criticize. It backfired, though. Diplomats shifted in their seats, some smirked, others tuned him out. The message that was supposed to project strength only underlined how much of it he's lost. Every attack on the institution, each jab at allies and claims that America alone could fix it, all just landed flat. Because at the core, Trump doesn't want cooperation. He doesn't want diplomacy. He wants control. He wants power. He wants the UN to echo his voice the same way he demands from the press and his fans at home. And when it doesn't, he calls it a failure, a fraud, and a threat. That's not leadership, it's his projection. The UN may have its flaws for sure, but standing at the podium and turning it into a personal grievance session only makes the United States look smaller. And that's what stuck when the speech ended. It was just another attempt to make everything about him, and it showed.